Welcome to another episode of the Maryland Made Podcast. The Maryland Made Podcast provides timely, relevant, and practical information to help student athletes and alumni become leaders, develop professional competencies, and be conscientious advocates in both their local and global communities. I am Walt Piggy, as a Big Ten Diversity Fellow in the Maryland Made Student Athlete Development Unit. And joining me today to continue our Athlete to Alumni series is a very special guest, Alana Herran. Alana is a former track and field student athlete at University of Virginia and is a current student at George Washington University in the Physician's Assistant and Master of Public Health Joint Degree Program. I'm excited to dive into this conversation as we go before, between, and beyond with Alana. Alana, first things first, how are you doing? How's the semester treating you so far, and how's everything going?
Yes, I am doing well. I just also want to thank you for talking with me today. I'm really excited to be here. The semester is picking up. It's a busy time right now with finals coming around the corner and the holidays, but things are going well. Yes.
Gotcha. Appreciate that. Appreciate you for taking some time to join us today on the Maryland Made Podcast. And I'm excited to, dive into this conversation. And I said at the top, kind of our Athlete to Alumni series. And you're our first student athlete or alumni student athlete, I guess, not from Maryland. So I'm excited to, kind of get your perspective and hear a little bit about your experience at UVA, but also, what you're doing now at George Washington. So before we, kind of get into everything that you're doing now, tell me a little bit about your upbringing and how your childhood, has shaped your identity.
Yeah, so as a child, I was definitely very active. I was always outside. I played a lot of different sports. I was dancing, I did gymnastics, karate, a bunch of different things. So I definitely think that's made me the very outgoing person that I am today. I always want to do something fun outside. And I never was super into watching TV and Netflix and things like that. So I feel like that's made me the, extroverted person that I am today for sure.
Gotcha. And like you said, you were very active, but you did run collegiate track and field. So tell us a little bit about that. When did you start running track? And then when did you know that you could be a collegiate student athlete?
Yeah, so I was dancing at Alvin Ailey. It's a very prestigious African-American dance school in New York City. And oh my gosh, so my mom basically forgot to pay my registration after the year ended. And what's crazy about it is that you have to audition again if you forget to do that. And so I decided, I don't want to go back into that. It's a lot of work. And that's what kind of led me to trying a new sport. And so a lot of my peers were running track, and that's kind of what sparked my interest to do it. It was around 7th grade. And I had no idea that I was going to end up running in college. It wasn't that wasn't a goal initially until high school. So, I love the atmosphere of track. Track meets were always fun. So that's kind of what made me want to run in high school in the first place. And I ended up being really, really good at it. And, my high school coach was like, you have the potential to run in college. And I was like, really? Okay, well, I guess we're going to run in college. And once I put that in my mind, I stuck with it and I was committed to it. And fortunately, I was able to do that.
Nice. I'm a big track guy myself. My dad's a high school track coach. My mom ran track her whole life. So I was actually born in May, and then the Junior Olympics for track and field is in August. And my parents always tell me this story. As soon as I was born, I was 3 months old, and they took me to the Junior Olympics and stuff like that. So I've been running track since I was 4 all the way through high school. So I was 18. So yeah, I definitely,
wow.
The track atmosphere is one of a kind for sure.
It definitely is. Yeah. Are you familiar with AAU clubs?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So that was what I first did. It was called, my team was called the Jaguars in New Jersey. And it was,
we used to run against y'all. I ran for a team called Cambria. We were purple and yellow. Yeah. So I definitely remember the Jaguars, the Comets, I believe.
Yes. The Comets.
What was it? The Supersonics, different teams from Jersey, Willingboro, Winslow, all of those schools.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow, so really good times.
Yeah, we probably were at some track meets together then back in the day.
We probably were, yes.
So I guess growing up in the Jersey area, New York area, how did you find UVA? When did that kind of recruiting process start for you?
So I actually went to 2 different high schools. It's kind of a longer story, but essentially the coach at my initial high school left, and that kind of caused me to transfer. So I ended up running at Union Catholic, which is a very popular running school in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And, the coach was, because we had such a, competitive team, he was very well fit to be able to put student athletes into college for running. So I feel without him, I definitely probably would have had a different experience. But I ran to a UVA coach do you remember New York City Armory?
Yeah,
that was the track
all indoor
that
meets.
I ran on. Yep.
Yep.
And so, a lot of college coaches would come to those meets and watch student athletes. And I really just kind of put myself out there. Like I remember going up to different coaches and just introducing myself and letting them know that I was interested in running potentially for them. And that kind of opened my eyes. And I remember seeing UVA and knowing that it was a very prestigious academic school. And that kind of was another set of goals that I had for myself. And so that kind of put UVA on top of the list for me. And once I visited and saw their campus, I just fell in love, and that kind of kept me stuck. Yeah.
I gotcha. Yeah, Charlottesville is a beautiful place. So
Beautiful.
definitely up and great school as well. So definitely understand that for sure. And I just kind of talk about, so you decide to go to UVA. And what were some of like your goals as a young student athlete, looking back, like high school senior, college freshman? What were some of your goals entering UVA?
Yes. So in terms of track, I was initially recruited for 400 hurdles. But because in high school I did I did long jump and high jump and things like that here and there, my coach was like, you would be really good at the heptathlon and pentathlon. So my initial goals of like going into college definitely changed while I was there.
Mm-hmm.
I was very intimidated, honestly, by the hep and the pent, just because it was new, and throwing shot put, I'm very, very tiny. So I was like, this is not going to go well. But then I ended up actually going back to 400 hurdles my junior year and senior year. So I would say my goals definitely fluctuated. And I think that definitely taught me how to be adaptable and just kind of taking things for what they are and changing the course of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say academically, I was always pre-health. So I had a very heavy science-based curriculum. And that definitely came with its pros and cons in terms of feeling like when we would travel for track meets, missing exams and not being with the other pre-health students was definitely a stressful time. But I always made it a goal of myself to just continue communicating. Like I was like, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to be the student athlete, I need to communicate with my coaches clearly about the expectations that I have and communicate with professors clearly about the expectations that I have, just so that, I wasn't running into any roadblocks that were out of my control.
I gotcha.
So I would say, yeah, those are my goals, to just stay focused and stay communicative, and yeah, just keep moving forward for real.
Gotcha. And talk a little bit more about that, like kind of what was your major, and maybe some other things you may have been involved in, because we have a lot of pre-health students. I was telling you, we have a lot of pre-health student athletes in particular. And I think, just understanding like how to balance everything, like in the pre-health majors, like y'all have a lot to do in terms of labs, making sure y'all are getting hours, making sure y'all are, studying around the clock, but also y'all are student athletes as well. So like how did you kind of balance all of that?
Yeah, so I was always told, even though I'm pre-health and even though you have to have this like heavy science-based curriculum, to not be afraid to major in something that was more of an interest to you. So
Mm-hmm.
I ended up actually majoring in kinesiology, which, it's still science related, but it was a very small program. And I loved it. I got to like really have a close relationship with my professors, which is important for recommendation letters. So that's a big key. Those like biology classes, especially when you're at big schools such as like UMD and UVA, it's hard to get close with professors and develop relationships with even your classmates. So kinesiology was a great major for that. In terms of things that I joined, I actually pledged a sorority in the National Panhellenic Council, so Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. That was not an initial goal of myself going into college, just because I felt like, as a student athlete, I didn't think that was going to be something that I could handle or fulfill. But fortunately, I was able to do so. And it changed everything for me, just being able to, develop these relationships with women and people that I can learn from, and even just, introducing me to opportunities to do community service and things like that. It's definitely a big part of my experience at UVA, and going to a PWI and having that support system with African-American women, and being surrounded by that was really important to me. So that was a part of my time at UVA. And then I also was a peer advisor. And so that was, I don't know if UMD has that, but essentially for incoming minority students, I was kind of a mentor
Okay.
to students when they were coming in. Yeah.
Nice.
And I just felt like, being a first gen grad, like it was really important for me to kind of give my perspective or help to students that might feel lost or, scared going into college. So I was really happy to be there for students during that time too.
Yeah, that's so important. Definitely. And like seems like you had a great, routine or great like kind of system in place, like getting involved in everything. I think that's something that a lot of student athletes struggle with, like when they get to a new campus, a big campus, and like you said, especially at a PWI, and it's like, all right, how do I find myself? Like, there's so many things that I may be interested in, but I feel like student athletes are typically tied towards their sport so much. You spend so much time with your teammates. You have, long practices. You're traveling so much. So it's like, how do I incorporate all these other parts that I'm
Oh,
interested in, like all
definitely.
these other identities into my life? So I think the fact that you were able to get so involved is a huge accomplishment and something that many, young student athletes can kind of build on.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because I feel like sometimes people look at student athletes as kind of like, this like cliquey group because they're
Mm-hmm.
staying with their team. And that's important. You want to have a really great relationship with your team and you want those people to not just be your teammates, but your friends, because, that changes the motivation and everything. But I definitely made it a priority for me to kind of just put myself out there in UVA outside of just my sport. And you're right, it's not easy. And, it's not an interest of everyone, but I think it definitely had its benefits for my experience there.
Absolutely. And you're just kind of saying
Yeah.
like it wasn't like easy. So like what are some things that you in particular like struggled with at UVA? And then like how did you overcome that?
I definitely struggled with rest. I definitely feel like given all the things that I was interested in, like I spread myself thin. And
Mhm.
I don't think I really noticed that until after college. I would look back and be like, all right, you did a lot, Lana. Like you honestly did too much. So I think just, trying to figure out what to prioritize, I think was what I struggled with. Like, do I want to stay up late tonight and risk, being tired at practice, more tired at
Mhm.
practice than I usually am? Or do I want to prioritize the track meet that I have coming up this week and actually get 6 hours of sleep and then catch up on work? So I think just remembering, what was more important at the time, and then just trying to be a master of all, which is not what they tell you is like not
Yeah.
able to do. But I really did try. I really did. And yeah, I think just like feeling that, I think by the time I became a fourth year, I was like, okay, I'm definitely burnt out now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I gotcha. Definitely understand that for sure. And like as a student athlete, like I feel like now like sleep and just like the knowledge of sleep is a lot more like available and accessible. Like I feel like we had a all student athlete event earlier this semester and the whole focus was on like sleep. We had like brought in like sleep experts and different stuff like that to kind of talk
Oh,
to our student
wow.
athletes. But like, yeah, I'm right there with you. Like as a student athlete, in a few years back, it was just like we wanted to do so much. Like we wanted to, like, it's just college. Like you want to experience everything, but you also, want
Yes.
to be the best that you can on, on the track or on the field. So, but yeah, but definitely I can see how, sleep was something that, that you struggled with.
Yeah.
And then, you talk about like you're kind of burnt out by your senior year, I guess, to a certain point. But like, when did you start to envision like what your future would look like or what you wanted your future to look like? I should say.
Mhm. Yes, that's a really good question. I remember, I would say like maybe going into my fourth year, I started thinking about how, like, I was going to have to start applying to PA school
Mhm.
and things like that. And I honestly was going through a time of deciding whether I wanted to quit track my fourth year. And I was talking to my mom about it, and she kind of asked me, she was like, what's going to be your story then? Like when you have interviews with PA schools or, even for jobs after college, like what's going to be your story? And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, if you quit, what's going to be your story? And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. Like, I don't want that to be my story. I don't want it to be that I quit and gave up because,
Mhm.
I couldn't handle it. And I don't want to discount, there does come a time, I think, in individual lives where, your body may not be able to handle it anymore, or your mental health may not be able to handle it anymore. And it might come at an actual time where you need to quit. But I felt like, I made a decision for myself that I can handle this and that I wanted to have a different story and that I pushed through. And so I think around fourth year going into that and thinking about that is when I started really thinking about my future and thinking about the story that I wanted to tell about myself. And it feels good to even say that to you now,
Mhm.
like I'm really living out exactly what I envisioned myself to say. And it would have disappointed me to say that I quit at that time. So yeah, I'm really happy that I stuck out with it. And I would definitely continue to tell athletes, if you really believe that you can do it, and to remember your commitment and why you wanted to start in the first place.
I love that. Yeah, I'd love that. I was
Yeah.
actually listening to a podcast myself like yesterday. This guy, Mark Champagne, he has a podcast called Behind the Human. And he's like a mental
Mhm.
fitness coach, mental wellness coach. And like he said, like a lot of life decisions and a lot of our future comes down to like a few questions. And one of those questions that he always says is like, what do you want your story to be? Like, what's your story? And then like, once we get into that mindset of like, all right, this is what the goal that we're trying to achieve. It's a lot easier to like, whether it be something that we're struggling with, is easier to kind of push through, because it's like, all right, I don't want that situation to kind of define me. So like those like little questions that like your mom's asked you, like, what do you want your story to be? Like that, especially as athletes too, like we're so competitive. So it's like, all right, I definitely, don't want that to be my story, like you said. So I mean, that's awesome, kind of how that all connects there.
Yeah, definitely.
And, you talk about the PA school process, or like deciding on going to PA school. So kind of what was that process like? And like, what was the process like choosing to attend George Washington and the physician assistants and master of public health joint degree program? Like, what was that whole process like?
Yeah, so initially I would say, honestly, most of my life, I was always like, I'm going to be a doctor. I was like pre-med. And as soon as I decided to go into PA school, my dad was not happy about it. I think PAs still to this day, they have this like misconception that they're not as valuable, or like this hierarchy that I'm not reaching the top, that's what my dad kind of put in my mind. And so for those that are interested, in PA school, I would just stick to what is right for you. I think I had to really be honest with myself. I thought initially with med school, I thought it was more about like what I was supposed to do and not what I wanted to do. And so as soon as I accepted that PA school was what I wanted to do, I went with that. And that's kind of what led me to go into that process. It's definitely a confusing process. I don't know if it's because it's still a growing profession, but the application process doesn't look the same at all the schools. So there's like different science requirements for every school, as an example, or different number of like required clinical hours that you have to have. So some schools require 1,000, or some schools require like 500, as an example. So I took a gap year. I took 2 years off technically before starting the program, because I needed to gain clinical experience. And so while I was working, I was a medical assistant and phlebotomist at a primary care doctor's office. And while I was working there was when I really started seeing the importance of public health and what that meant. And I had a specific doctor that I was shadowing, and he had this public health background, and other colleagues were always going to him about like his public health perspective. And I was like, wow, like, is this something I need to consider? I honestly, like, I don't know. I don't know how I didn't know what public health was, but it just was not something that I really thought about. And there aren't a lot of joint degree programs out there. So that definitely made GW stand out, and that became a school that I was interested in. And I think DC specifically has just so many opportunities to offer. So staying here was definitely a huge plus for me. I was like, I love DC. And yeah, that kind of led me to choosing GW, being in the joint degree program. And I'm really happy to be here. It's a great program.
Gotcha. And no doubt, man. Shout out to the DMV. We're right around the way as well. So yeah, definitely cool. I think men's basketball actually has a game tonight against GW actually. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, so choosing to go to George Washington, can you like give all of our pre-health students or interested students that may be looking to go to George Washington, or any PA students, kind of like some of the details like of the program, and kind of like how is like your degree plan and like classes that you're taking and things like that?
So most PA programs are around like 2 years. Sometimes they're like 24 months, 27 months, 33 months. But the joint degree program with the MPH is 3 years. So my first year is mostly just the public health degree. And I'm taking like one PA class each semester. So that's like a big pro to doing the joint degree if you're interested, because then your next year, when you start the PA year, you don't have as much of a load. So it's MPH here is mostly just developing, public health skills. So epidemiology, learning about the social determinants of health. Right now I'm working on a systematic review. So learning how to do research and collecting data and things like that. So really, really cool skills that I never would have thought I'd be able to do before. And then your second year is all clinical education stuff. So just really like learning like the medicine essentially. And then your last year are clinical rotation. So that's when you split up your time every 6 weeks and focus on a certain specialty. You're essentially working and applying your skills that you learned the year before. Nice. So 3 years total. And it's really organized, I would say. I think you kind of have a certain type of focus each year of the program, So yeah, that's kind of what it looks like.
Okay. What's been your favorite part, of the program since you've been at GW?
My favorite part of the program. That's kind of a hard question. I would say my favorite part of the program, I feel like I keep talking about the joint degree, but seriously, because we have like basically a small cohort. There's like 11 of us compared to like the 70 of the PA class. So I really love just having that like close knit network. It really made it easy to kind of find people that you work well with, and we're just like we're like a little pod. We go together for questions and we stay in contact. We do things outside of class together. And I really appreciate that. I think that's important to have like a close support system in these type of programs. So I love that part of the program.
Nice, no doubt. That's so important. I think especially like for grad school too. And the next question I'll ask you is kind of, about this, but like, I feel like in grad school, you're like, all right, I'm not an undergrad anymore. So like, you don't think maybe that community aspect is that important, but it is. Like, it's so important. And y'all are, like you said, for a 2-3 year program, y'all aren't there for 4 years, and y'all aren't kind of living in the dorms together or anything like that. So it is sometimes harder to find community. And I feel like as you get older too, it's harder to make friends. Like that's just kind of how it is.
No, that's so true. And then even, as previous like student athletes, we are used to having that team aspect to it. And so it was definitely a transition starting grad school and not being on a team anymore, And so still kind of like yearning for that type of feeling is still relevant to you. It's still important,
No doubt. And like earlier to that point earlier, I actually like as a student athlete, like how did you balance everything? So like now as a grad student in a joint degree program, like how are you balancing like grad school, work, life, and just like still, being yourself? How has that balance been for you?
Yeah, so I definitely think all of the things that I learned from undergrad transferred right over into grad school. So staying organized, I have like, the notes in your in your Apple like iPhone app. I literally write in there every day like my exact like daily goals. We have weekly goals and monthly goals and even yearly goals, but I have like exact daily goals of like the things that I want to accomplish that day. And I'm a really task oriented person. So that feeling of doing that, little check mark or taking something off. Yes, I need that. So that's something that I do to help me just, stay focused and stay organized. And then I also do a lot of like rewarding of myself, like giving myself that positive reinforcement. So on the weekends, whether that be, going out and hanging with my friends and not doing any work on a Friday or Saturday, or if that means having a glass of wine or just watching a movie, just making sure that I'm staying balanced with my social life as well and staying connected with my friends, I think really goes a long way with grounding me and keeping me like stable and happy in that when things are like getting hard and stressed and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Like that's so important. And you seem pretty like organized, from your time as an undergrad with so much on your plate, but also now too in grad school. And I'm right there with you in terms of like the goals. Like I feel like we all strive towards like at the beginning of the year, it's almost, we're winding down, 2021 is winding down. And I already know once December, January hits, everybody's going to be looking at those New Year's resolutions. Like, what are my goals for the year? But like, I feel like the daily goals, like winning a day and like being able to say, all right, I had a successful day is more important than, trying to strive towards, all those goals. Cause sometimes it can get overwhelming, but like, if you can take it like one day at a time and attack it that way, I think it's, typically you're a lot more productive. And like you said, rewarding yourself, like you feel more successful too. Cause it's like, I already know if I look back on my 2021 goals, like there's some goals that I still didn't achieve. And I'm like, did I, was I successful this year? But if I'm like, all right, I know today this was my goal. So like just taking those small wins, they add up.
Yes, definitely. I totally agree with that. Small wins are important.
Absolutely. And kind of we're winding down like the between in terms of like what you're up to now. And I guess one question I'll just ask you for like any students that are interested in public health or, going to PA school, like any general advice that you would give them.
Something that I was told that really stuck with me was figuring out like the skills that you want to develop or the skills that you want to improve on or even put into action. And then also thinking about like your values and like kind of what you want to gain from the program and really aligning that with the schools that you're looking at. Like I feel like every school is kind of offer you a degree. But I am a strong believer of like the school's mission and kind of how they handle things being an important factor into like where you choose to go. So I think really like sitting down with yourself while you're applying or before you apply or even right after you apply and just really taking the time to think about like what your values are currently and kind of the things that you want for yourself. I feel like that'll really change your perspective even during the program and kind of, I think you'll gain the most out of your time too, if you're truly like intentional about what you want.
I like that a lot. Yeah, I like that a lot. We had with our Gossip Fellows, which are a cohort of student athletes that, kind of go through a career readiness like curriculum. We had like interviewing with them earlier, and we were like doing mock interviews, and a few were like we were acting like we were grad schools and they were applying for it. And so we were asking them questions, but we all kind of talked as well about kind of making sure that you get the information about the grad school that you're going to, whether it be like the culture of the, of the graduate school. You were kind of talking about your experience, like your cohort, like it's tight knit group and things like that. Just getting a feel for where you're going to be at, because you're going to spend a lot of time there in the next 2 to 3 years of your life. So making sure that that's a good fit for you, making sure that the curriculum aligns with your values. So definitely echo what you said there.
Yes. Awesome.
So, and then looking at beyond now, like what's next for you? Like what are some of like your goals once you finish your master's and once you finish everything?
So my first goal, honestly, I have some travel goals that I have in mind.
Perfect. That's what I like to hear.
Yes. So I really do want to see the world. I don't know if you can relate to this, but I feel like, during college, when the spring break came around, like we couldn't go anywhere because we had to stay back and we had to practice. And I used to hate that, especially as someone, I love being on go. So I definitely I have a lot of places on my list that I want to go and see. But outside of that, professionally, I have to take a national certification exam, obviously, to get like licensed as a PA. So that would be first, studying for that and taking that. And then it would be the job search. And I really do want to focus on just gaining confidence, I think, in my skills. I think I can definitely see myself, being very, very nervous about really providing care for people right after graduation. So probably looking into like primary care and emergency medicine as the first specialties that I would work in, gain that confidence, apply my skills. And then eventually I want to do a lot of like international development work. So really focusing on like underserved communities abroad and really applying the skills that I learned here, there. And yeah, just going where there's a need, essentially.
I like that a lot. And I gotta go back to it in terms of like you talk about like your goal in terms of like traveling. You got a lot of places, and I should have asked you this earlier, but like what are some other like interests that you have, like beyond sports, beyond the pre-health field and everything like that? What are some other interests? And then if it's traveling, like what's that one place that you are like I still haven't been to yet and that you really want to see?
All right, well, this is not going to happen anymore. But when I was little, I used to always say that I wanted to be a singer on Broadway. And I wanted to be out there acting and things like that because I love musicals. But that's not happening. So I'm going to keep that, at home in my room. But other interests, I mean, I'm really passionate about diversity. And this isn't really like a fun interest, but, there's not a lot of Black women or honestly Black men too, or other even minority groups represented in the PA profession specifically. And so I am like the diversity rep at GW for the PA program right now. And so I'm really focusing on learning more about what the GW PA program needs in terms of diversity and how to improve that. And so I'm working on a survey right now, actually, to kind of ask students what they think is missing, what things they feel like need to be prioritized, just to kind of better understand the needs of the program. So that's something I'm like really prioritizing. In terms of traveling a place, that's such a hard question. There's too many places to go and see.
I agree. That's a tough one.
But like the first one that comes to mind is Japan, just because my dad always says that was one of like his favorite trips. And yeah, I think that would be the first place if I had to choose. If I can go anywhere right now, that's like where I would want to go.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good choice for sure. Definitely a good choice.
What about you? What would you say?
For me, that's a tough question for me too, but I got like a big list. For me, there's like this like a little island off the like coast of like Africa called like Seychelles. It's like, yeah, it's like near like I think Madagascar a little bit, but yeah, it's like an island. Okay. Yeah, it's like off the coast, but it looks beautiful. From the pictures, it looks great. And it's like it looks like it's like a tropical type of vibe. But yeah, like, and then of course, like just going to Africa is like definitely one of my goals. There's so many countries like in Africa that I would love to hit.
So many.
And I'm like, this seems like a nice like vacation destination. So like definitely want to take a trip there. But it's a lot of beautiful places out there. So
I might need to add that hopefully soon. Island to my list.
Yeah, but definitely look it up. Yep.
Cool.
And then as far as like the diversity work that you were talking about, like that's so important as well. Especially like in
Mhm.
your field. I think, what you're doing is so important and so big. And getting involved again, like you said, getting involved as a grad student beyond the degree program. I think that's, huge as well. So, keep doing that work. It's necessary and it's definitely needed out there.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
No doubt. And kind of like winding down, like this is another tough question. But I have to ask it, like, what does success mean to you? And like what does that, look like to you down the line?
Yeah, that is a tough question. And I like that you said to me, because I do think that success looks differently to everyone, Um, I feel like it kind of relates a little bit to what we were talking about earlier in terms of goals. I think in order to have success and to be honestly satisfied and happy with your success is to be intentional, and like you have to create goals. And that doesn't mean that they have to be big. They can be small. Um, but I think that a lot of times, especially with like social media and stuff these days, we focus so much on like what other people are doing and societal standards and things like that. And you think that you're being successful, if we say, we make it big and we're like, I don't know, we're rich,
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that you're successful, are you? Because
Yep.
I don't know, I think to me it means being personal and like really like honest with yourself about what you want to do with your life and how you want your life to look like. um and I could say I used to care a lot about what people think, like a lot, and sometimes I still do.
Mhm.
But I think as soon as I started realizing that I did that and like changing my perspective and growing and learning, that's when I became most happy and I felt most successful in the things that I was doing. So I think that's how I would define it.
I like that answer a lot. That's so important. And like this generation and like the era we're in is like the on-demand generation. Like we feel like we have access to everyone's lives like around us, and it's hard not to like compare. I think we're all guilty of that at times, to like just compare ourselves. How many likes we're getting, how many views we're getting, and everything like that. But I
Mhm.
think, like you said, like just figuring out what works for you, figuring out like what are your personal goals and like how you want to achieve them. So I think that's so important for everyone.
Yes.
All right. So kind of the last question that I have, and this is kind of like, my wise words segment, right? So, looking back, like you are, you're an alumni, now, former student athlete, but what's that one piece of advice, if you could give to your younger self or younger student athletes?
Oh, that one piece. Yes. I feel like I had a turning point, I think, in undergrad during college, like when I was running track, where I realized like the reason why I had so much anxiety before me, that feeling, oh my gosh, when you're like your stomach is turning and you feel like you're gonna throw up.
Yep.
Oh my God, that feeling, I can still feel it right now. That feeling is different. But I realized honestly, like the reason why I would get so nervous is because I was thinking about like the pressure that I had. Like I was putting so much pressure on myself to like fulfill other people's expectations of like what I could do and like what my potential was. So I would think about like my high school coach. I would think about like the how proud my mom would be if I won this meet, like all this stuff. And then I was like, I'm not having fun. Like I'm not having fun with this. And so I would tell student athletes today to really have fun. It is different because I didn't really have like Olympic goals. I knew that I didn't want to run professionally. And I know that kind of comes with a different level of like intensity
Mhm.
and different pressure. But still, I think that having fun and balancing that fun with your hard work and with the pressure that you want to take on to motivate you is really key to, I think, not having regrets, and then also just feeling that success and feeling that relief on the track or in any sport that you play or run or do, or you can't say play track. But yeah, I think that's what I would say, like balancing uh your goals with fun. Yeah.
Have fun. Definitely important. That's one of our Maryland made quotes and themes that we say, we're just having
Oh
fun.
really?
Yeah, we say we're
Nice.
just having fun. So yeah, so definitely I'm right there with you, and I understand that feeling. I feel like for me playing like football in college, like before I used to like be a kick returner and stuff, like before every kickoff, I got this feeling like in high school too. My stomach, like it would just feel like just that, like I'm nervous, but like at the same time it's more like a good nervous, but like it's so
Yes.
weird. It's like I feel like right before the kickoff, I feel like I can't even play. But then as soon as like the ball
Yeah.
gets kicked off, it's like you just go and it just, flows naturally like that. But once you kind of get
Yeah.
into that mindset where it's just like, let's just have fun, do your best no matter what, like leave it all out on the track, leave it all out on the field, but having fun and changing that mindset and like, all right, I don't have to put this pressure on myself. I'm just, doing what I love since I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's good, it's good to have positive anxiety versus
Mm-hmm.
negative anxiety. It's good to be nervous. It shows that you care. Like
Mm-hmm.
you really want this and you
Yep.
should. But yeah, you can't let it deter, like take you away and backlash and kind of end up self-sabotaging in a way,
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
appreciate that answer. I'm sure our student athletes appreciate it as well, your wise words.
Oh.
But yeah, so I mean that kind of wraps up our formal portion of the interview. And then just kind of to close, I just want to say thank you for your time. You're in a busy time right now doing something that's very, very big and important work at GW. But thank you for taking the time to connect with us here over at Maryland. And as far as like where can people find you, or if we have students that are interested in connecting with you to kind of hear more about your experience, let us know kind of the best place to find you, whether that be social media, LinkedIn. Where should people find you at?
Yes. Well, also thank you for having me here today. I love that what you guys are doing. I love that you're motivated to offer people the opportunity to hear from other experiences, because that's how you learn. So yeah, I'm glad that I could be someone, that can help other students as well. And in terms of where to find me, I think the easiest way is definitely by email, honestly.
Okay.
It's my first and last name, Alana Herran at gmail.com. But then I also have LinkedIn. You can find me on there. Yeah, I think those two are probably the easiest ways to contact me.
Sounds good. I'll definitely put those in the episode notes. And when we put everything out there on social media for everyone to be able to find you. But Alana, again, thank you for your time. Everyone out there listening, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Maryland Made Podcast. Please be sure to download, subscribe, and share our episodes on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Make sure you're following Maryland Made on Instagram, Twitter, at MD Made Terps, and then connect with us on LinkedIn as well. And until next time, we are out.
Awesome.